Hi there, I'm Angela. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in today's video, we are doing part 3 of the Vogue V9246 pants. And we're actually going to do the construction today. For those of you following along, thanks so much for your patience. I realize these videos are sort of spread out in time quite a bit, so I'm kind of doing them as I can. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. So with that, let's jump in. The first thing that I'm going to do is to stitch the dart in the front of the pants. And my pieces have laid here since the last video. Life, it gets so busy, doesn't it? I definitely need to make more time for sewing. It would be good for my mental health. So I have my little chalk marks from when I cut these out. And my inside of the fold is going to be the right side of the fabric. It was so close that I just had to call it one side or the other and kind of stick with it. This is such a thick ponte. This is going to make a really nice pair of pants for the fall. Got the first side pinned up. And I'll put a link to Stylish Fabric, which is the company that I got this ponte from. I don't have a link to the actual fabric, but I'll put, the name of the fabric and the website of the company, so you should be able to find it with a quick search. I'm going to take these over to the machine and get these darts stitched up. I'm trying to get better about removing my pins as I come to them, but it doesn't always happen. And I've come to the tip of the point of my dart, and I want to show you something that I have been doing for years now regarding darts. Rather than back tacking at the point of the dart, what I do is I lift the needle, raise the presser foot, and then pull the garment away from the sewing machine so that I have kind of a long, tail of threads here, and then I cut it off at that point. So what that leaves me with at the tip of the dart are two long, I know that may not be showing up, I apologize, but I have the two long threads here at the point or the tip of the dart. So what I do with that is to tie it into a knot. And I usually will do tie it 3 times to make like a pretty strong knot, something that's not going to come undone. And I'll explain why I am doing this here in just a second. I saw this or heard about it a while back from a much more experienced sewist than I am, and it seemed to make a lot of sense, so I've been doing it ever since. So after I've tied my knots, I still have my 2 long threads here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut those off. And I usually will leave maybe a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. I don't want to cut it right down too close to the fabric. And the reason why I do that is because if you back tack, like the theory or the thought is, if you back tack at the tip of the dart, what that can do is cause it to be very bulky there, or even cause a pucker that'll show once you open up your piece and press your dart. So I have had good results doing that, so I keep doing it, and it's not really, too much trouble. So I had already stitched the dart in the first piece, and I've got them both done. So we'll meet back over at the cutting table to get these pressed. So we're going to be pressing these darts toward the center, which is kind of usually the case with darts, at least in my experience. My iron kind of fell asleep while I was preparing and stitching, so we'll give that a second to come back to life. Let's get in there. I'll go ahead and give it a try. And this fabric kind of being what it is, I don't know how well, it will press as far as holding a sharp crease. And I am a terrible, terrible presser. I think I need to make better use of like a pressing cloth. I probably am going to leave marks on my fabric. That pressed pretty nicely. Try to hold that up too. You guys can see that. So I'm going to do the other one. And I think I will grab a pressing cloth. I feel like I'm damaging my fabric. Usually I can't be bothered to do things the right way. Oh, I'll get better. Okay, let's see how that looks. And what I use for a pressing cloth is just a piece of very lightweight or thin muslin fabric. I know a lot of people use organza, like silk organza, for their pressing cloth. All right, got those two pressed. Then the next step is to stitch the front to the backs at the inner leg. So I am going to work on getting those pinned together now. I'm going to move you around so that I can leave my pressing mat here. I'm going to work over on the other side of my table there. So I've got my back legs here. And I'll have to remember that the right side of the fabric is on the inside here. So what I'm going to do is to put the back pieces with right sides up, just to help me kind of keep it straight. All right, now I'll get these pinned up together. And since I did make adjustments to the length of the pants legs, I'm really, really happy that they seem to be meeting up nicely together at the bottom. I mean, I did measure carefully, but there's always that little voice in the back that, or a little thought that kind of is in the back of your head, like, oh, I hope it all matches up, since I didn't do it like straight out of the package and I messed around with it, made alterations or what have you. But it looks like everything is lining up nicely. So I am very happy about that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this one stitched up so I can then get it out of the way before I pin the other side up. So I'm going to do that now and I'll be back. All right, I've got the first side stitched up. Get the other side pinned. And I made a video at the beginning of the year talking about what my goals were sewing wise for 2023, and one of them was to get a serger and learn how to use it, and I still have not done that, and it is still like on my wish list or my plans. It just turns out as garden season is ramping up, I've kind of been having to spend all my money on things related to the garden, such as soil. We're putting a fence around our veggie garden this year, so I'm kind of buying lumber for that. Like every time I get paid, I set aside a little money for garden fencing and other infrastructure, like another raised bed. So I still will get a serger. I just might have to wait a little bit longer. And so that always, because I don't have a serger, it always leaves me with a decision to be made about how I want to handle the raw edges of whatever I'm making. So a lot of that depends on the type of fabric and also the type of garment. And what I'm kind of thinking with this Ponte is I might just leave the edges raw. It is not, it's a Ponte knit, of course, so it's not raveling or fraying at all. It's like solid and sturdy. So I might just leave the edges raw. I know that's probably a real turn off to a lot of you guys, but it doesn't really bother me. As long as the pants look good and they fit good and they're comfortable, I'm usually not that concerned, although I still do love the thought of having professionally looking insides of my clothes, but I'll get there. Right now it's just not a possibility. So I'm going to stitch this up and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got the other side stitched up, and it occurred to me that I originally had intended to baste these together just to make sure that all is well, But I think maybe I've become overly confident about my pants template, that maybe too overly confident, and this will be the one time that it fails. What I will do, the crotch curve area, that I will probably baste together, because that's where most of the adjustments would need to be made, I think. We'll see. I am definitely not a professional sewist, so take it all with a grain of salt. And I am going to get these pressed. I think I'm just going to, I don't know, maybe press the seam open. I think that might look nicer because this fabric is so thick. And if I pressed it to one side, it might be very bulky. So I'm back over here at the other side of my table where my ironing mat is. Got my pressing cloth, and it's kind of sometimes hard to use a pressing cloth when you're trying to press a seam open because you can't see what's going on under there. So I'm just going to skip the cloth and come what may, and just kind of use a light hand with the iron first. And I think this might be my first time working with Ponte knit. If I ever did before, it would have just probably been once, and it probably would have been a while back, unless I'm totally just drawing a blank. Let's see what it looks like. It's getting there. I'm afraid to just give it too much force. And I only have this set on the polyester setting, so I didn't want to go too high with it. It might be as good as it's gonna get. I think due to the nature of the fabric, it's not like gonna hold a sharp crease. It's just so thick and it's a knit. So let's see. I think that's getting pretty good. Maybe one more pass. Okay. And grab the other side up. So the next step is to actually stitch the crotch seam, and I am going to go ahead and just baste it, and then I'll probably go ahead and baste the outer legs so I can do a test fit and see what we have. Back here on the other side, I can't tell you guys how much I love this table. It is so awesome. If you have the chance and you have the space, I highly recommend building yourself something like this. Now that I had such a nice big work surface, I can't imagine not having it. And even if my sewing room, which doubles as my office and it's where all my books are, my desk and everything, if it was smaller, I would still somehow sacrifice space in other areas or take some things out of the room just so that I could have room for this table. It's so nice to have such a big, large workspace. Get this pinned up. We're kind of at that moment of truth. Sorry if you guys can't see everything here. Sometimes I don't realize that the camera is too close or too far. So I'm trying to adjust it, and you can see where all the action is right here on the table. And I'm kind of wondering if they sell this Ponte in other colors. It's just so nice. I've already washed it at least once, and I might have washed it twice in preparation. Like washed it once a long time ago, but then didn't get around to sewing it until now. Then couldn't remember if I washed it, so I washed it again. I think I might have done that. It washed up nicely, and it feels good, and it's so thick. But even if they do have it in other colors, I'm still on my fabric ban, so not yet. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, get it basted. I got to remember baste, and I'll be back. Crotch seam basted, and now I'm going to pin the outer leg seams and get those basted. So what I'm finding here at the top edge is that the curve on the hip area of the front is not exactly matching the side, the edge on the back. So I don't know if that's because of my adjustments, or if that is because the front is more tailored with the darts, and then the back is going to fold over and have elastic. So it could be due to that. I'm just going to pin it as best as I can and baste it, and we'll see how we go there. I'm kind of making the edges match right now, just to see how that works. I'm going to get the other outer edge pinned up and basted. And I wanted to also say, when I was talking earlier about edge finishing, the raw edges, one other thing that I of course consider, not only does the garment have to fit well and look good and be comfortable, but I also always keep in mind what's in the best interest of the fabric too. So that's definitely a top consideration. Like, I would never just leave raw edges if it wasn't going to be good for the fabric at all. With this one, I feel like it'll be okay, but still, we'll see. It's always time to finish the edges, even when the garment's put together. I just wanted to clarify that in case I didn't say it earlier. Maybe that should be the top consideration. Like, what does the fabric need most of all? And then the other things could play a factor. So I'm also running into that same situation over here. And this fabric's so dark that I'm not sure if this is showing up. But the front piece has the nice hip curve, whereas the back piece is straighter. And I'm really thinking that that has more to do with the fact that the back is going to have, an elastic waist. I'll be back. All right, I've got everything stitched together enough to test fit. So I'm going to try these on. If I think I can do it in a modest kind of way, I'll show you guys how they're fitting without, I don't want to show you guys things you do not want to see on my body. So let me go take a peek first, and then I'll be back, and maybe I'll bring you with me. So it turns out they were pretty large. I'm going to have to take them in like at least an inch down the sides, which is, I could do. It's not a problem. It's better that than the other way around. But it's a little frustrating when you follow the measurements on the pattern envelope, and you even look at the measurements on the pattern pieces, and it seems like it should be suited to you pretty much, pretty well, maybe minor adjustments. But when the sizing is so off, it's like, am I just doing something wrong, or was the pattern just that much off? Either way, this is an easy fix. So I'm going to go ahead and take them in a little bit, still basting, still using a basting stitch, and then try them on. I think I should be able to show you guys how they're fitting at that point. So hang on, I'll be back. So I have them on now, and they are still a little loose, but I don't want them to be, skin tight. And by the time I do the front waistband and snug them up with the elastic in the back, I think that'll do nicely. And if I have to take them in down the side seams at that point, that should be okay. But I'll kind of give you guys like a full, uh, how it looks full around. So I've got a lot of flap here, excess fabric where I took them in so much. And then in the back, it is loose here at the back waistband. That's because it's going to get folded over and have elastic in there. The front seems like it fits really nicely. I keep thinking I might want to take them in just a little more, but before I do that, what I'm going to do is to go ahead and put the actual stitching in, at the crotch seam and then down the side legs and see what we're looking at there. And if I have to take them in more, I can at that point. But I can't see my backside. I do have a full length mirror right here, but I'm kind of at a disadvantage. So I'm going to carry on and I'll be right back with you guys. Okay, I went ahead and did the permanent stitching on the crotch area, the crotch seam, and the side seams. And I did go ahead and take them in down the side seams by like another 1/8 of an inch. And they feel better now. They don't feel like they're going to slide down. Even though with the elastic in, they probably wouldn't do that anyway. But still, it feels a lot better now. And they're still not too tight. I don't feel like I made them too tight. They're very comfortable. So I think I'm in a good place now with these. And they're fitting pretty well. They're comfy. And I'm going to go ahead and move on with the next step, which I don't know what it is yet. Oh, yeah, and they are way long. I added way too much length onto the legs, but that's an easy fix. That gives me room to play with them and try them on with different shoes to see what I want the final length to look like. Just a heads up, this next part gets really long-winded and rambly as I try to figure out how to deal with the waistband situation. It's the reason why it's given me kind of throwing my brain a little curveball is because the back comes up much higher than the front, just because the back does get folded over to make an elastic casing. So, and because I made alterations to the front of the pants, that means that I'm going to have to maybe do some alterations with the actual waistband piece that I have not cut out yet. So I kind of am trying to figure all that out, and I get a little bit rambly. Just a heads up, feel free to skip right over that part. We're back in the sewing room now, and the next step is to work on the front waistband. And if you saw, I think it was part 2 when I was cutting out the pieces, and I talked about not cutting out the front waistband yet until I had cut everything else out, basted it together, see how it fit and everything, because I knew I would be making adjustments to the width here at the waistband area. Before I do anything though, I want to take a look and see how this goes on. And they're saying to pin the waistband to the upper edge of front, matching centers, adjust the ease, and then baste and stitch, press seam allowance towards waistband. So one thing that I'm supposed to do is to ease stitch along the front of the waistband here on the pants. I have not done that yet because again, I wanted to see how this was all going to come together. And what's kind of stumping me is that, say this was my whole waistband piece out of fabric, and I guess it's supposed to match up edges along the outer seam edge of the leg. But then how do you stitch it on? We'll stitch it onto the right side of the fabric, because I guess you just go to where the front and the back meet there. It's stumping me because the back comes up so much higher than the front. And I'm like, oh, it's like throwing my brain a curveball. How do I do that? So let me turn the pants right side out for a minute and just kind of take a look this way, and maybe it'll make more sense. I know this is a lot of rambling. I apologize, you guys. Another kind of evidence on why things take me so long. I think I'm just going to cut the waistband as is and not worry about trying to ease this in. So what it will amount to is that the waistband will be the same, width or length, however you want to look at that, as the waistband section on the pants, with enough extra like hanging over to be the seam allowance. I think if I had not made the alterations, this top part of the pants would be way wider than the waistband itself, and then I would definitely have to do the ease stitching in, but I'm comfortable with how they're fitting, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut this as is and see what we get. I have plenty of leftover fabric of this. If I need to unpick it and cut a new waistband, it's just a little piece, I can do that. So I'm going to cut this out of the fabric and also out of interfacing. And when I was cutting out the other pieces and I knew I was going to hold off on this, I did make sure to keep my fold exactly right so that I kept my grain line, and the stretch is how it's supposed to be and everything like that. Just an FYI. Pin's not quite long enough. Sometimes when I know I'm getting low on interfacing, like the kind that I use the most, I'll be on the lookout for Joann sales when they have it like half off and get about 3 or 4 yards of it. It's pretty economical when you do it that way. I have these big giant paper clips that I got on Amazon. I was using one of my big long quilting pins to kind of fold the yardage and all my little scraps of interfacing together. But the head of the pin came off, and this was getting too thick for a pin anyway. So I pulled out one of these giant long paper clips. These are so cool. I'll try to remember to put a link to these below in case you're interested. Normally I just use them like in my planner notebooks, but I thought, hey, it would be good for this interfacing too. Set that aside. I'm just going to iron the interfacing on to the fabric waistband. So back to the other side of the table. Of course, my iron fell asleep again, so we'll give that a minute to come back. And it also occurred to me that I probably should go ahead and iron the crotch seam and the outer leg seams on the pants. So I'll go ahead and do that too. I'm pretty sure I have the elastic that I need for these pants, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to need 1-inch elastic. So while the iron is warming up, I'll check in my little elastic drawer here, see what I have. I may not. I've got like 1¼ inch elastic, 1/2 inch elastic, 1/4 inch elastic, and the only piece of 1 inch elastic I can find is this piece here, which is too short. So we'll get as far as we can today, but there may have to be a part 4 on this so that I can replenish my elastic stock and finish these pants up. All right. But for now, I'm going to set it aside and finish the ironing on the pants. I read or heard once long ago that in the garment industry, that pressers, the person whose job is pressing, is often, maybe I'm getting this wrong. I'm going to turn these the other way. That the person whose job it is to press can sometimes or often make more than the one whose job it is to do some of the stitching, just because there's such an art and a skill to pressing. Yeah, maybe I won't. All right, here we go. This might be a press to one side kind of deal. There's two in the deepest part of the crotch seam. There's 2 rows of stitching, intentionally per the pattern instructions. And if I try to press with seams apart, seams open, that won't really work out too well because of that 2nd row of stitching. Plus, too, thinking back to, the job of a presser, if you didn't know what you were doing, you could really, ruin someone's hard work by burning the fabric or, otherwise marking it up. I don't know how pressed this is going to look from the right side of the fabric, but it's kind of difficult. Let me try one more pass through down here at the curviest section. These pants are very bulky. This fabric is so thick, which I am really going to appreciate when I'm wearing them. But it is making it a little difficult to work with them at times. See how that looks. I think it looks okay, and it might be, as pressed looking as these pants will get given this fabric. So I'm going to run the iron down the side edges, outer seam of each leg. I may end up calling it after that and dealing with the whole waistband on the next round, which should be the final round. I thank you guys for watching with me as I do this. It's nice to have you keeping me company. This might be the worst part of making long pants and long sleeve tops. Just ironing all these long seams that can be hard to work with, hard to get to. Of course, having the right tools always makes a job better. And I think before I get to the next session, what I'm going to do is to look up ironing tips for ironing a heavy ponte. I feel like I got some interfacing gook stuck on the bottom of my iron, which probably could use a good cleaning, but not today. All right, I'm going to turn them right side out. And this is probably a good place to stop, given that I don't have the elastic I need. So next time we meet, we will be doing the waistband, both front and back, and the hem after taking off whatever excess we don't need. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this 3rd round of working on these pants. we'll have one more session where we'll do the waistband and the hem, and I'm going to strive hard to get that out no later than this coming Friday, so there won't be such a long span in between. I appreciate your patience, and I hope that your sewing's going well, and I will see you next time. Bye.